Welcome to another Pharaoh stream with myself, Pharaoh, and we are going to be looking at Interwar art at the Royal Academy 1927. We have gone through 7 years so far of really brilliant, interesting art. Definitely going to see this continual change in direction from the artists. This is Dixie's second year as president of the RA, with his agenda to kind of push people to kind of more interesting, more youthful content. We've got 45 minutes, so I'm going to get cracking with some of the content, and we're going to kickstart with something a little bit different here. It is another Philpott painting. You can immediately tell from some of the faces here. And I really love this piece. It's called The Weeping Venus. Now, of course, those who are familiar with, again, Ovid's Metamorphosis will be familiar with the story of Venus and Adonis. Venus falling desperately in love with the mortal, but unfortunately, Adonis gets killed by a boar while hunting, and she eventually pours nectar into his wounds, after which an anemone flower springs out of his blood. So let's have a look and see what's happened. Well, we've got the figure of Venus here on the right-hand side, and Adonis in the center with his kind of broken staff. I think Adonis is often shown with a staff. Now, for me, what's clever about this, that there's a bit of a transposition that goes on. Most Venuses are typically nude, reclining, there for viewing, so to speak. But that position has been taken by Adonis, who is in this kind of almost sleeping position. So the subversive Philpott here swapping the two characters out, and so it's actually the male nude that becomes the kind of scene. Now, Venus here on the right-hand side is actually totally clothed. So, and also she's not reclining. She's sitting in this kind of pose at the on the side across here. And so it's a very different setup to most Venuses. Now, I think this scene has been done several times. I've seen a few kind of 17th century works. But this is a very novel layout where Philpott is definitely trying to create a bit of juxtaposition with other Venuses here. I mean, I would say that his Venus rendering is quite mannish. These quite broad shoulders, a big nose, is rather uncompromising, I think. And we know that Philpott can do quite beautiful women, really. But the Adonis is really lovely, very handsome man, fully nude apart from his kind of cape, which is almost fallen off, and shoes. I mean, he's chosen a difficult pose here, with some tough foreshortening on the feet, but again, I think he just absolutely smashes it, and again, it just shows Philpott's technical quality. He's a technical painter, but he's also inventive and does interesting things like this. In terms of the background itself, there's no alluding to the hunting, so to speak, but you can see this kind of beautiful landscape in the background, and the figure of Venus balanced by this twig coming up. Again, was unable to find this in color, but I think this is actually one of Philpott's best pieces. Very clever, but you need to understand about the piece and the kind of Venus genre in general to understand what he's trying to do with this piece. Obviously, I mean, I think again the flowers are reference to the metamorphosis, and you can see the flowers are kind of sprouting out around him, even though we can't. Like you can see the wound across there. It's not got the flowers kind of springing out of there, but he is sitting in the bed of flowers. But that kind of helps give that feeling of sleepiness, and that he's just kind of fallen asleep in a pasture. It's a very calming scene. And if it wasn't for the broken staff across here, one might not think that a tragedy has happened. And again, I think Venus's expression post flowers is, she's almost kind of offering up. She's definitely in communion with us, the viewer. So again, I think it's a really interesting piece by Philpott. Yeah, definitely one of the better pieces of the year. Okay, we've got this small little one from Adrian Stokes here. Like Adrian's had a couple of nice pieces. I feel like some of the imagery has not done him justice. I mean, I think he's a colours man. Again, a landscapist who is sort of in the Sidney Lee camp of being interested in the kind of the mountainous as opposed to the pastoral. And again, his colours, you've got the purples, blues, greens. These could be taken straight out of a Griffenhagen. But again, I think a very reasonable and very nice landscape here. Okay, now we're starting to see a bit more of the kind of, I think, the American influence here. This is from Louis Baumer, who I think is a one shot. I think he doesn't get picked up with anything else. He studied at St John's Wood, also then onto the Royal College of Art, and then some of the Royal Academy schools. He's relatively young at this point. Did a lot of stuff for magazines as well, so he's almost a bit more kind of like pop culture stuff for like the Strand magazine. It looks like, also like an arts club member and lived in Oxfordshire. So again, I feel like he's a bit more kind of like into the kind of Americanized, like the kind of the new cinema wave that's coming through, and that this figure here looks very much like a movie star. You've got her hands kind of very delicately produced, but it's also kind of blocking her modesty. I mean, she's showing a lot of skin, really. She's got a very swan-like neck. It's all about showing off the shoulders, and then the feathers giving a kind of a textural contrast to the kind of smoothy white marble from her. She is staring at us, but not in a confrontational way. She has this. I wouldn't say coquettish, but certainly something a little bit softer, and especially with the pose, gives that kind of like look at me, but she's not going to bite our head off kind of thing. So yeah, relatively novel, and a nice composition here by Baumer, like this one. Speaking of other new artists, we've got Solomon J. Solomon. I would say that Solomon is really an old boy, literally trained by Leighton Millay and Alma Tadema in the 1870s and 80s. Spent some time in Paris as well. I mean, he's had a lot of stuff in some of these magazines, I'd say, but nothing really captured my attention. I think this is the problem with a lot of Millay's portraits as well. I don't think they are as good as his kind of genre/mythic pieces. Again, very strong technically, but again, I think lacking in the power of the portrait, in its ability to tell you about someone. But this was a piece that I thought was worthy, and this is the Right Reverend Lord Bishop of Worcester. So obviously he is a bishop, an Anglican bishop, but he was also I think a chaplain. That's why he's got some medals across there. So he was heavily involved in kind of doing sermons and stuff during the First World War. So he's a war veteran at the same time. And I think Solomon's got him in a seemingly casual pose here, sitting down, hands together, but there is a real intensity in his head. That he's staring right at us, with a strength and a certainty in what he believes and what he's doing. Very much like sorry to the base of this, but it's almost kind of headmasterly vibes. If anyone's been brought in to the headmaster's office for wrongful behaviour, this is the kind of face that you will see across the table from you. But I mean, just in terms of styles, Solomon It's painting rendering relatively tightly, but then having a bit of a looseness in the background, giving it this kind of dreamlike quality. I would say very much in that kind of academic portrait style that we've seen from someone like Cope, for example, in some of the earlier years. But yeah, I think nice piece, and it does make the cut. Okay, W.G. de Glen, we had something of his last time, I believe, but we've got an interesting one here, which is the choice of the model. Now, one motif that is going to be big from this point onwards is the Judgment of Paris. So basically, this is all to do with the story of Troy, where Paris, the kind of a prince of Troy, had to choose who he thought was the most beautiful of the goddesses between Diana, Athena. Sorry, I should say no, it's sorry, Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena with the three choices. And I think there is and obviously this is called the choice of the model, but this is very much an allusion to Paris making this choice, but he's placing himself in the role of the Paris. I think with that title, he's also inviting us to make a choice of model and almost saying, if you're a painter, which of these three girls would you choose? We'll see more of the Judgment of Paris theme, but it's going to come back time and time again. I think it's probably the most popular motif out of everything. I mean, I would say because it's a bit generic, it's not strictly a mythic painting. I think for me, there's less direct interest, but I think well rendered. This is obviously quasi mythic, but also a nude at the same time, and it's a nice, some nice examples. And I think he's got some tough poses, like the woman sitting down on the chair across there, which he renders really nicely. Okay, next we've got W. Russell Flint. We've seen him kind of break through last time. Again, I am a big fan of Flint. I managed to buy a book on him the other day, and I'm just impressed about like the volume of work that he produced. He was very, very prolific. Like I said, I would say that like 70 to 80% of the work he does, I don't like at all. It's very like it's almost kitsch. I'm sorry, Mr. Flint, from beyond the grave. A lot of kitsch. But when he does these kind of like more symbolist pieces, I think it's much stronger. Now, this is a panel for a modern room, and you can see like there's definitely some kind of deco inspired elements to this, but it's like an excuse for a series of nudes. And it seems to be a whole lot of women on stilts. There is literally no context. I couldn't find anything about this piece. Now, I'm a huge fan of like painted panels and paintings as part of home decor. I think it's really beautiful, really unique, and makes up part of a story of a room and a space. And I think for special houses, it's vital. It is such a shame that I don't know more about this at all. I tried to find about it in the book, but it didn't say anything. So if you've seen this panel in a house somewhere, please do say. I feel like it must be part of a triptych or something like that. There's an allusion to some other parts that are going on, but again, I think really, really lovely. It's hard to see some of the detail from the work, but I would say that Russell Flint is maybe one of the best nude painters. He's just so good at nude women, captures their subtlety and their delicacy, and he's always on the right. Whenever you're talking about female nudes, there's the kind of like what I would describe as the eros porn line. Basically, there is a point where the nude is no longer kind of tastefully erotic, but it goes into pornography. Or kind of like maybe salaciousness is the correct word. I feel like it's more like, and often that line isn't necessarily about the amount of clothes they're wearing, but the pose and the general spirit of the piece. And I feel like Flint, he always knows how to place a nude to make it artistic and not salacious. But nice piece from Flint here. And actually, here's another one. This is called Flowers and Lacquer. And I think one thing that's missing is just the beautiful colours that he does. Mainly does watercolours, so there's a real looseness to his work, but sometimes does oils. But I just love the deep reds, the golds, the greens here. This is obviously like a chinoisier colour from the red lacquer, and you've got this beautiful woman here. But I mean, for me, the watercolor with the silk organza here is like this is like technical mastery. Flint was known as like one of the best watercolor painters in the UK, and it really shows from this kind of work. Really nice, and I love his colors. Now, we're on to what I would describe as one of my favorite landscapes of the last couple of years. This is I think it's a mezzotint from Frank Short. I think we've mentioned Short before. I'm gonna say we have, but this one's called The Shadowed Valley. Now, for me, often I find that mezzotints are a bit sloppy. You know, again, I prefer the humble woodcut over, or even like a standard etching over a mezzotint, but this for me is just totally and utterly supreme. I managed to track down a real version of this, and I think the colors in it are even more sublime. If I'm honest with you, so we sort of see it could be a desert scene, but equally it could be like rolling hills and countrysides. These kind of white dots look at first like it to be like a mistake on the page, but it is in fact birds flying in the sky, and you can see these various animals or creatures they're alluded to. I mean, I think it's just a real beautiful, mysterious piece, and actually it just works being kind of quasi monotone. I mean, I think they've used this kind of like almost kind of sepia-esque ink as part of it, and again that just really makes the whole thing work so much nicer than the black and white. Again, the clouds totally beautifully rendered. This has got to be one of my favorite print works of all time. I think it's just so mysterious and interesting, and very very powerful and evocative, while still again it's all about leaning into the medium that you're using. I think it's about respecting and understanding like what is the strength of the mezzotint, and it's kind of like mood again. Sorry to be crass, it's mood and vibes with the mezzotint. It's not about harshness of line, it's about softness and like leaning into the sloppiness, and he's using that in a really interesting way. I managed to find the original as well. So he started out with this kind of like line drawing. I'm sorry for the low resolution, that's all the best. I think it's at the V&A right now, but I mean turned out quite accurately from the original here. Okay, we've got a William Orpen here, not controversial, but kind of slightly different to usual, which is a woman, and this is Penelope Lawrence. She's famous for co-founding the Rhodian School in Brighton. So, if you know what that is, it's quite famous apparently. Again, I'm a big fan of Orpen as like one of the great male portraitists of all time, but actually he manages to knock this brilliant portrait out of a woman across here. And Penelope is sort of leaning on the chair again. It's got the classic Orpen kind of casual pose, but there is just like so much swagger in the lean here. This is almost kind of like could be a man or something like that. I think it's just very 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 powerful, and again shows her determination and strength. So again, I think Orpen does do men great, but also these kind of like interesting, powerful women as well. Okay, we've got a Julius Olson here, the Pier Moonlight. Why did I put this in here? I think it was kind of interesting just from its kind of variation on the Olsen subtype. You know, it's about the kind of darkness of the night, juxtaposed with the kind of the light of the moon, but you can also see the waves and the pier across there. Again, I think it's nice, but I think we've seen some better landscape this month in retrospect, really. Okay, we haven't had a Griffenhagen for a little while, or Hagen, and this is the Pool of Bethsaida, so we've got a theological one. I've got a little passage from the Bible here, if people don't know about this story. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethsaida, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, and paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. So basically, this is a story from the Bible. That's the kind of setup of the pool. But you can sort of see the waters across here, and occasionally it was thought to be like a geyser or something like that. It would kind of make some kind of funny swirling waters, and people would hang around there waiting for it, and the first person to be in the pool would get better. But there was a long-term resident there who was blind, I think, so he was never able to see when the water was swirling, so was sort of stuck. And Jesus came along and healed him, but controversially healed him on the Sabbath. And so we've got a couple of different sets of figures here. I would say there's maybe 4 major clusters. We've got the left-hand side, the kind of infirm and the mothers of the infirm. So you've got this kind of sick guy with something wrong with his foot, but also these kind of weeping mothers desperately looking after their children. And, you know, it's very, as a father, I can't look at stuff like that without being exceptionally sad. We've obviously got the main figures of Jesus and the blind man, and then on the right-hand side we've got these 2 other beggars, obviously from a distant land. So again, it shows the renown of the Pool of Bethsaida. Now, in the background, I mean, these guys could be related to the sheep. They could be shepherds, but I wonder whether this figure here is like a Pharisee, and you can see him looking on at Jesus as he's performing the miracle, and he's sort of scowling at the same time. You know, that's why I was thinking about the controversy of the picking up. He said to the guy he healed the guy and told him to pick up his bed, and I think picking up the bed counts as work in the Pharisaical, Talmudic, legalistic sense of the way of doing things, and so he's disapproving at Jesus' miracle. So again, there's a little bit of interest here. I mean, we're set in this kind of almost Renaissance background with these kind of lovely rolling hills, lovely archways here. But I think it's the 2 figures here, Jesus and the sick man, where there's some kind of brilliant dialogue. You know, I think Jesus is often shown as this kind of like soft, ephemeral. He's just sort of floating through Jerusalem, but we've got Jesus shouting at the man to get up, and the man, he's sort of stretched out. Again, he isn't quite looking at Jesus. I think he's still blind. This is the moment before he's being healed, but you can see he's lifting his body. This is the moment that the miracle's happening, and it's not this kind of soft, oh, I'm waving a magic wand. It's a command and a word from Jesus, and you can just see the strength. I love the pose, the hands up, and he's kind of shouting out at that man. So we're capturing this moment of miracle. This is one of my favorite Griffenhagens for sure. Like I think you've got everything that you'd look for his work, which is beautiful rendered figures, the kind of symbolistic landscape, little notes and references to the Renaissance. But I think just these 2 figures here alone are so unbelievably powerful. And you know, as soon as you do a theological painting, you're competing with 2,000 years of quality paintings, and he manages to pull something that is simultaneously original but also familiar and powerful at the same time. So really good piece here. Right, we've got another Dixie here, and this is the Elsa, the daughter of William Hall. Do I have something on her? No. So Dixie, yes, he is president of the RA, but he's still kind of knocking out these society portraits at the same time. You can see this kind of lovely Kingwood Baroque piece of furniture across here. Some of these, I mean, the color on the flowers there is phenomenal. Again, he's been liking some of these kind of stands or boards in the background to create a bit of business. And again, it loves to place his sitters sitting down on these kind of lush, rich chairs. I mean, look at, you can really feel the gilding of that chair there. But interestingly, he's got this sitter in a much more confrontational pose. The body's sitting 3/4 away, but the head is looking directly at us. It's one, again, not of confrontation or kind of coquettishness, but I would say confidence. You can see like one hand is kind of pulling towards her, so it's a bit defensive, but the other one is kind of draped down, giving that casuality. I mean, she's exceptionally beautiful, and the roses, sorry, the red in her cheeks reflect the kind of the roses to the side of her. So she is the rose that is blooming. But again, it's that combined with I mean, the rendering of this hand is just like amazing. Dixie's done a phenomenal job here. But then again, it's the textiles. I mean, the drapery here is so delicate. You feel every single strand. But again, it's not been stylized at all. There's a powerful realism to it. So it's interesting. You've got the real, like, and again, look at this satin. This is like a shot satin. So there's two different colors inside, a lighter one in the light, and then a slightly darker cherrier color in the dark. I mean, just the technical ability for this is just like true masterful. Then he's adding on the tassel detailing, but then he's got this exceptionally beautiful woman looking at us. Again, it's all about showing off the neck. I don't know. Again, there's a bit of shoulder here as well. So again, I think there is something of the kind of sensuality and the kind of eroticness, but through sharing only just a small amount of skin. You know, it's all about yeah, the connection between the kind of viewer and the viewed here. But I really like this piece. Big fan of this work, although it's I would say this is not really like classic Dixie. Classic Dixie is that kind of ephemeral, you know, she's just sort of staring off into the distance, kind of floating in space. This is almost kind of like Dixie at his most realist, but also in some ways some of his most powerful rendering. Okay, bit of sculpture. I mean, last year was phenomenal with sculpture, if I'm honest with you. This year, less so. We've got this piece from William Macmillan. I think we've had the Art Deco, the big exposition d'art décoratif, where you've got a number of kind of French sculptors showcasing their works. And I think that Macmillan is the most French-inspired of our sculptors at the time. You've got this decorative piece here, but it's kind of classical inspired with this kind of classical dolphin here and this kind of beautiful woman. But it's that there is a bit of like an attic feel to it, with the head turned to profile. You know, in some ways, an awkward, difficult pose, but there's still kind of a subtlety and a sensualness to it at the same time. So nice piece there from Macmillan. We have a second Philpott. So even though he's still knocking out these symbolist pieces, he's still doing his kind of portrait work. And this is of Mrs. Henry Mond. Now, Henry was a baron, so he's like an aristo, but also a politician, industrialist, and financier at the same time. So all in all, you know, a man of society. Like Philpott has taken a leaf out of the Dixie book and put her behind the kind of a screen here, put a few robes and fabrics on the floor and had her lying down. And again, I mean, you couldn't get far. This is quite away from the kind of the lush sensuousness of Dixie's work, and it's more about maybe something like the individual character itself. I would say maybe something about it's not the fabrics, it's the person and the character, and you do get this kind of there's a sternness and a harshness to her, but also a beauty at the same time. There's a youthfulness. She's got this kind of classic 20s bob, so she could be a bright young thing, etc. But it's not trying to kind of present her in this kind of idolized way. Like, again, my criticism of Dixie is that's kind of woman as ideal, while I feel like Philpott's trying to show the true character of her at the same time, even if it means compromising on the kind of background. And he's kind of knocked down the colours, so again, all of the focus is drawn to her and her face and her dress at the same time. I mean, even like look at the colour, the value difference between the hands and the skin. We're meant to be looking at her face and her golden hair, and I mean the head rendering is particularly beautiful from Philpott. So very nice. Okay, we've got another. This is a Cohen. I would put this in. I would put Cohen in like the Cope sphere of things. If you remember back from a while ago, they're kind of employed as like high society portraitists. Again, still sort of in the sergeant wake with these kind of long, tall, full length, detailed portraits and kind of subtle backgrounds. But this is the Right Honourable Sir James J. Austen Chamberlain. It is not Prime Minister Chamberlain, it is his brother. He's a statesman, served as an MP for 25 years, was a Chancellor of the Exchequer, and also Conservative Party leader for a while as well. So, pretty bigwig here, and you can see him in all of his lordly attire. There's a strength and a confidence to his pose that definitely caught my attention. Again, Cohen is another guy that's been similar to Solomon, has had quite a few of these society portraits, but I feel like they're just too static and too dull to be included, if I'm honest with you. And this one was definitely better, but I get the impression that Chamberlain was probably quite a good sitter here, and you can see he's got a good pose, lots of confidence. The closed fist is quite that's often not used because it's just so confrontational there, but it really works. It's kind of balanced out with a kind of more mellow expression in his face. So yeah, nice piece there. Okay, we've got Frank Staten by Meredith Frampton. Again, this is just classic Frampton here. Sitter in this kind of casual, almost room-like setting. I mean, I would say that one thing that's interesting is that despite Frampton's realism, obviously is Frampton a realist? I mean, not really, because he's painting in a very stylized way. Again, that kind of sculptural modernism that I talk about. But he is. I mean, look at all of the detailing on the clothes, etc. He's trying. There's a kind of a faux realism to him. But from this point, Frampton does play around with perspective quite a lot. So take a look at the chair. There's a natural kind of janky feel to it. It doesn't feel quite right, in my opinion, and that's because he's flattened it out. It's if this was in perspective, the lines would be different. I'm pretty sure the for example, the armrest versus this kind of bottom line across there, he's got it as almost like a perfect diamond, which gives it a kind of a flat quality. So this painting has a feeling of realism, while at the same time being quite unreal and surreal at the same time. So just a little bit about the sitter, Frank Staten. He was a writer known for a series of movies, this is including A Woman in Pawn, and that is PAWN. I'd just like to say 1927, The Inferior Sex. I can't comment on that, and A Gamble in Lives. He has his own IMDb page, so that's quite cool. So again, kind of just showing some of the kind of figures that are coming through in terms of like because Frampton isn't doing these kind of big society guys, he's doing that kind of like emergent cultural elite as portraits. Like again, if you go to the I was down at the National Portrait Gallery the other day, and like it's just interesting. Who are the people that we try and remember? Who are the people that get the portraits? And obviously, it's people who have the money for it. But it's just interesting who gets included. And I was at the there's a section for like the noughties, noughties and tens, and it was basically like musicians and cultural figures as opposed to statesmen. Really, like I think there's like Mo Molan had something, etc. But so I think what Frampton really represents is that kind of like there has been this sea change in who gets the paintings, who gets covered, etc. Okay, we've got this piece here, an allegorical Renaissance piece called Music from Agnes C. Tatham. And she was a portrait painter as well as an illustrator. Mainly did stuff on oil and tempera, but did a bit of watercolor. Studied at Slade and then into the Royal Academy at 27. So, I mean, I think what's interesting is just how much like Quattrocentro Renaissance inspiration there is at the Royal Academy at this time. So again, but it's done in this kind of strangely modern way. So again, this is definitely a modern piece, very much I would say out of the Griffin Hagen wheelhouse here. But again, if you were to look at the background, you might be mistaken that it's a I don't know 15th century Renaissance piece. Even the choice of an allegorical. Well, is this really an allegorical? It's kind of more like because there's actual musicians here, but I mean it's of the allegorical genre, I would say. Now, in terms of the composition, this is in a lunette, so it's probably going to be used indoors or for a specific location, which is quite tough to deal with. And she's chosen to like crop certain buildings here, so there's a bit of weight either side, which is quite cool. But then there's a mountain in the background, and the musicians stand up tall, so you get the kind of full power of the musicians. Their kind of verticals get kind of echoed by the columns on the left hand side and the kind of guy on the right hand side across there. So there's still good weighting left to right. But then she's put a number of figures kind of crouching down or sitting down either side. You've got kind of like the learned man on the left hand side listening to music, while also the kind of paupers and the slaves or whatever on this right hand side. So it's music for rich and for old, for the dancers and for the lovers, for everyone. So nice. I'd love to know where this is. It'd be really cool to see it in situ. Okay, we haven't had a Laura Knight piece for a bit. I mean, again, I would say that she is getting a lot of popularity, but for a lot of her kind of, I describe it as realist circus pieces. And I don't know, there's just something so kitsch about the circus. They just do not age well. And I think that Laura really suffers from like she obviously really good technical painter, definitely. But really suffers from what she chooses to paint, which makes it very kitsch. Now the question is it that she just happens to is it just like because circuses just don't really age very well, or is it a fault of hers? I mean, I have to say that I do feel like it is a fundamental taste fault, because if you see the work she does during the Second World War in a decade's time, it's just so rubbish and naff and propagandistic that it feels like she has a hard time choosing really good subjects. That being said, I did really like this one. This is dressing for the ballet, so it is kind of like her circusy acting performance piece. But what it really is a nude. So you've got a kind of a woman au toilette, like we've seen, or à la toilette, I should say, like we saw the Shannon piece before. So it's an opportunity to kind of show off femininity, showcase the human body. And there is kind of little elements of realism here. So you can see the kind of the kind of ballet shoe on her foot, and you've got the kind of woman mending on the background, but still it looks really good and rendered nicely. Great pose. Look at the foreshortening on the arm there. Lovely work. This is actually one of my favorite Laura Knight pieces. She's so good at, unsurprisingly, portraying women. It's one thing she specializes in, but this it's a nude that's been elevated. If it was just her, I think it would be good. But then there's all of this kind of business with a woman in the background and the story behind the actual painting itself that makes it extra interesting. Okay, I'm running behind, so I'm just going to absolutely bash through these. I'm afraid, guys. This is John A. Wells, Mrs. Roger Pilkington. Again, I think this is part of the new wave of portraiture coming through. Look at these two. I think these are Afghans or great like Afghan greyhound mixes. Again, classic deco dogs, but again, it's the pose here. She's sort of sitting on the table. I think that's kind of risque in some ways. Look at that kind of shoulder being shown, and this beautiful face and eyes. There is a realism, but also it's kind of still on, I would say, that kind of Frampton-esque smooth spectrum. But you've got the kind of smoothness of her balance with the texture of the light, fluffy dogs either side. Okay, we got a piece from Dodd Proctor. So we saw one of Ernest's pieces last year. This is his wife. I mean, I'd say that Dodd Proctor is one of the more famous RA artists today. Love to do kind of women in this kind of modern style. Again, I would put her into the kind of sculptural modernist camp, this kind of deco feeling. But there's a couple of things here. I mean, this is definitely one of Dodd's best pieces. It's called Morning. So there's the hint of the allegory here that she represents the new morning or the new awaking or the dawn, that kind of zeitgeist feel that's been going on. But also this could be just a woman in the morning. So there's that kind of duality. She's messing up with her perspective again, because look at how the bed is laid out here versus the table. There's almost this kind of fisheye lens thing going on, lens distortion at the top, putting us in situ, but also kind of zooming us in. Look at the color palette here. It's just all about whites and pinks. Beautiful color choices here. I think it's all about subtlety here. Lots of blues though, but it's all about hidden blues in the shadow. Really nice from Dodd. I would say that this is actually her best picture that she does, I think, at all. This one's from Vivian Forbes, which he's the lover of Philpotts. I mean, I just like this. This is the flagellation, because it's obviously Christ getting whipped after seeing Pontius. I like this because it's got fat Pilate. Not enough people depict Pontius Pilate as an absolute unit. So I like that, and a little shout out to Vivian as well. But I mean, if you look at there's not much detail in the background here, so I think this does suffer from, needs a bit more depth to it to be a real banger. But I quite liked the novel layout and pose for it. It's not got that kind of Renaissance-y vibes. We're almost kind of seeing things as a servant looking on from the side. Okay, we saw Sauter's breakdown masterpiece last year. I mean, this is a lovely portrait from him of Miss Faye Compton. It's again all about the powerful woman here. This is the kind of woman rider. She's got a dog. There's a tapestry in the background at the same time. Sauter does some really good portraits, man. I think I love that allegorical piece, but again, this is very different. It has got a bit of a vibe of that kind of deco, the new powerful woman coming through, but also, so again, look at her pose, crossed legs, looking at us, very confrontational, the kind of riding gloves in hands. Yeah, really lovely piece here. Another Shannon here, Hermes and the Infant Bacchus. Not much to say, if I'm honest with you. This is very much just kind of like standard Shannon. The rendering is really nice on the Hermes, is what I'd say. But again, I feel like he does suffer from too much sameness year on year. He's still kind of stuck in the same pit. But this is definitely, I would say, one of his best rendered pieces. It's a tough pose. Look at it. He's having to kind of foreshorten the leg. It doesn't quite work, but it's a bit of a weird pose he's going for. he's Bacchus is riding on the back of Mercury here. So okay, we've got Ricketts here. Ricketts kind of continues to show his Aztec influence with the death of Montezuma. Obviously, it's all about Cortez and the Aztecs, etc. And you've got him portraying Montezuma as this kind of quite noble figure, struck down by an arrow, folding in on himself. Not one of my favorite pieces, but I do quite like the colors. And again, it's a novel subject, so kind of interesting. And again, deeply subversive Ricketts here, portraying the other as the noble one. This is the ideal noble savage here. This is a piece by Stephen Reed, and it's called Jane Shaw. Do I have some notes on that? Let me just check and see. No, I should have looked that up. But it's kind of like a historicism picture. I should have got a bigger image. This is incredibly small, but it's actually quite a large piece with lots of figures in it, and I thought it was interesting. But maybe check that out in your own time. Okay, this is one from John Collier, another one of the arts and crafts guys gone into portraiture. I thought this is brilliant. Aldous Huxley. So again, there's the two Huxley brothers. Very confrontational. You got this kind of youthful swagger at the same time, but it's contemplative at the same time. Aldous was meant to be like this sickly youth, and you get an impression of that. But I like his big hair. I mean, this is the archetype of the sensitive young man. Very good painting, I think, and definitely something a little bit different to what we've seen. Another Ricketts here, Don Juan at his own funeral. I'd have loved to see the kind of color version of this, because I think you need to see the colors of this. But I think I put it in just because it was another Ricketts. But again, not his best year in my opinion. Okay, we saw Dodd Proctor. This is Ernest's version of the Judgment of Paris. I mean, definitely something Gauguin-esque about this. Certainly the kind of the women that have been left out there. But for me, it's like Ernest's colors here, which are quite frankly revolting and genius at the same time. These kind of like putrid greens, the browns, the reds, the blues. I mean, I would say in terms of layout, I don't love it. There's not much symbology between the three different figures. It's hard to tell who's Aphrodite and who's Hera, etc. You can obviously tell Paris and the Golden Apple and his Cupid. I mean, Cupid's got a very strange gait, but the Paris has been well rendered, although he does look like he has dreadlocks. But it's actually more about the again, I think the colorscape and the rendering is what it sets it out for me. And also the poses. I mean, just look at this very awkward pose with the leg here. It's very strange, but so the whole thing is like a surreal, freakish dream, etc. But it does work because it is almost like a dreamlike moment that happens. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Ernest's work, actually. Very Dupas, very French deco school, etc. But it's the colors kind of like disgust me and intrigue me in equal measures. Okay, we've got another Hawksley. She's the kind of like illustrated girl we saw last time. I mean, this is a little bit kitsch now, having seen the little deer across here. But we've got like Adam and Eve in a different context. Eve, she's just had, like, what I like about it is this is Eve just biting the apple, and she's just recognized her nudeness, and she's covering up her nakedness with her hair. So again, I think that's really cool, capturing that moment, very novel. And you can see that Adam is yet to be corrupted, and he's just hanging out with the stag there at the back there. So I like the kind of female attention and the novel subject there. It's interesting. Okay, Alfred Turner. This is a new sculptor. Now, Turner, again, is originally started out basically in the Thornycroft Pegram school of academic sculptors, very much on the Renaissance style, but basically takes a turn in the 20s to this more, let's say, kind of like modernist, like classical modernist style. His figures are kind of freaky, like proportionally. You can instantly say it's an Alfred Turner because like that. I can't quite put my finger on it. I'm sure you could work it out, but the bodies are relatively like classical and proportional, but it's the heads and the hands are always. I think the hands are too big and the heads are too small, and the expressions are always there's a dullness to them. Now this is called an allegory. I have not found out what this is an allegory to. There's obviously kind of Pegasus in the background, so maybe something about flight or something about victory is what I was thinking of. I would love to know where this is. I couldn't find out. But really interesting piece. I mean, Turner for me never, like I said, never quite reaches the kind of the top echelons of sculptors, in my opinion. But he's definitely unique, definitely instantly recognizable. So worth a shout out. Okay, and then we're going to finish off here with like a brilliant piece by Charles Sargent Jagger. Now, Jagger is exceptionally well known for his war memorials. Sheffield lad, trained under Lanteri, who basically Lanteri does like a generation of artists. Really, again, we forget the importance of the teachers. I swear, especially in these academic phases, and Lanteri is, I think, vital for the sculptural power that happens in this kind of late phase. He fought during the war in the artist rifles, but basically does a ton of war memorials. For some reason or another, Jagger doesn't really get picked up by the Royal Academy until like this point. I think maybe because of his like Sheffield lower background, his like northern background. You know, he's not really a society boy, so he doesn't get as much interest. But I think those war memorials, especially like the Hyde Park Memorial, probably top 3 in the country, in my opinion. Get recognized. He starts to get more like he becomes an associate. So ARA, remember, is like you're not a full member yet. You're just kind of you're working your way up. And this is a garden group. So there's a couple of these kind of plinths with nymphs and satyrs on there. So it's kind of like lovers pieces. Now, what's interesting about this is I actually saw these up for auction a while ago, so I managed to steal a picture of them in situ, and it's fun to see Jagger outside of his kind of like hypermasculine or like Stern's soldiers, etc. You know, this is playful, this is fun. Like the rendering of the woman here is wonderful. You know, it's very sensuous, very fun, very cheeky, but again, nothing like all within good taste at the same time. And you can see the satyr here pressing the hands down on the nymph, getting close, ready for the kiss, and you know she's kind of pushing herself up, wanting it just as much. So there's that kind of mutual union. The context, the contrast of the long form of her versus the kind of his squat at the same time. So really lovely piece. There's actually two of them in a slightly different pose in the auction, but I thought we'd focus on this for now. I think this sold for something like 30,000, which I think is criminally cheap for one of the greatest English sculptors of all time. But there we go. Right, that is it for this year. I think a pretty good year overall. Nothing too like totally like brilliant. Top picks would maybe be the Dixie, the Weeping Venus was really good. I love that. Maybe the Laura Knight one was good. The Dodd Proctor Morning was great as well. I say the Jagger one's good, but in the context of other Jagger work, you know, it's difficult. And maybe that Frank Short Valley one was excellent as well. So, okay, guys, let's leave it for now. I will see you next year. We're gonna see what happens in 1928. Goodbye.